Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of The Flash. A great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, obviously we're picking up Bart still in the condition that he's in, but we also, because Nora's kind of losing hope because she doesn't feel like there's any way around this. Plus, her dad's in a terrible situation he's in. But Caitlin's the one that kind of believes, things will work out because, this team has always done the impossible so she believes that, it will work out. So at the same time, we have Barry inside of August's mind talking to him, kind of trying to understand why he's doing all that he's doing. And it's interesting because obviously Bart compares him to being like his version of Thawne, and there kind of is. There's that deep resentment and hatred, which once again, it's never 100% clear in this series at the very least why Eobard hates Barry as much as he does. Obviously, there's the comic book reasons you can pull from of I think one of them is he knew what his future was, that he was destined to be a villain, but he admired the Flash, and if I can't be the Flash, I will be the one that killed the Flash type of thing. I think that's kind of one of the stories. It's a combination of that, jealousy, whatever the case may be. His hatred runs deep. And August's hatred for it's all speedsters, but in particular Impulse. Because for him, it's I wanted to give myself speed, and I got it. Cool with the artificial stuff, velocity and everything. But then it's it was never good enough. I'll never be fast enough because I'm not an organic speedster. I'm a fabricated speedster. So because he's a fake, trying to fake it until he makes it. That's what this whole war is about. He splintered himself across time to do what he did. Which once again, I think is so interesting that you did all this to become, to become a real speedster, and then some of your clones are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to be real. They're trying to be quote unquote Pinocchio's real boys type of situation. So I think that's so interesting that that element is still there. It just transferred in a different light. It's still kind of the same thing of both of you wanting those clones that are trying to become their own people, not to be sacrificed to you. They want to be their own person. They want to be real boys, just like he wants to be a real boy. I want to be a real speedster, and that's why he hates Bart so much, because Bart is just so lazy in his mind. It's so undeserving. It's I deserved it. I done all that I've done. I should be the one. But that kid, he doesn't deserve it, and that's what pisses him off. That's why his hatred runs so deep for Bart. It is a jealousy thing. That's why it's oh no, I'm gonna crush you. You basically took what was so important to me, so I've made sure to try and take everything important away. I guess Nora doesn't do that. We've seen it with just the way Bart acts. He is very hot shot, I'm so good, and no one else really has that. I'm sure Barry's had his moments like that in the past, but Nora, at least this version of Nora, isn't really like that. But the previous one, I guess you could make the argument, but Bart is, and that's why it just rubs him the wrong way. So it's so I'll stop all this, the war and everything, just make sure to allow me to become a real speedster. But for Barry, it's no, I'm not going to give you what you want. There's no telling, if you become an organic speedster, what damage you can do. So Bart's no. But for August, it's oh, you're going to change your mind, and kicks him out of his mind. Because the whole reason why he ended up losing his memory too was a byproduct of splintering himself across time like that. It's right, it was an unforeseen accident, so it wasn't even he planned that, oh, I'm gonna draw you in with my, it's no, that was a complete accident, but it worked out in the end, and even August kind of worried about the monster that I am, but Cecile's no, you knowing who you are, you don't have to be that, you can change. But that's a sad thing of, he even said it himself, what if I, regardless of that, what if there is nothing, what if I'm set in stone, what if I'm going to be that monster? And so that is the complicated thing of are there just some things in life that are just set in stone? It's just who he is to his core. Because that's the thing of you become this nicer person because you don't have your memories. Now with all your memories, you remember who you are. It's would it have been better but it's I don't know. It's an interesting and complicated aspect of identity. If you are a better person without your memories, because who you were with all your memories is what led you to become the villain you are. He's worried that the emptiness of not knowing who you are, but also end up finding out who I was a villain, that I've hurt so many people. I've killed people, that's not an easy thing to hear and learn. So the question is, what is Team Flash going to do? And Nora and Bart are suggesting just giving him the speed because it's like, no, Bart's still unconscious at this point in time. And Nora wanting to make sure everyone was okay. It's like, right, we need to save Central City. But for Barry, it's like, I got to protect my family too. Because it's like, if I can stop Godspeed here and now, that means the future doesn't have to play out the way it does. I can change the future. Like, I can make a better place for you guys. Like, everything could, be better. Like, we cut this off the head here. Like, he never goes off and does the terrible stuff that he does in the future type of situation. So that's kind of what Barry was hoping for, like rewriting history a little bit in that regard. Well, the future in that regard. And so it's still the thing of like, even Jay agreeing that it's dangerous to give him speed, but it's like, what other choice? We got to find out with something else, and it's like, so Barry comes up with an idea. It's like, despite how fast Godspeed is and everything, like all those clones and everything, can never compete with a true force of nature. So bringing in Nora, which once again, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I like her speed lines the most, because hers is multicolored the way it is. Because it's a representative of her being the Speed Force. It's just I think she has legitimately just even her zoom effect looks cooler than everyone else's, But Nora is like, hey, big Nora, and it's like, yeah, remember when we met? And I just kept vibing on. It's like, yeah, it's something I thought was actually kind of interesting. Well, because obviously, he's an artificial speedster, so yes, he's fast, but he can never keep up with an actual force of nature. So they're bringing in Nora for this, and it's like, right, if everyone's going to compete against this, the whole point was to try and drain all of those speedsters to kind of stop them. So Nora juices everyone. Everyone gets a little boost. Even Iris, because Iris still does have a spark. That's how she became a speedster in the first place, because she has that spark inside her. So she gets, and it's like, oh, but about Bart, and Nora's like, my impulsive boy. Now, it's kind of interesting when you break that down and think about it. At least I started getting heady about it, where I'm like, it's interesting because the original Speed Force kind of looked at Barry as her daughter, her son, sorry. So it's kind of she always kind of played a mother role to him. Now this new Speed Force is his and Iris, one of his and Iris's children, which is interesting because that kind of makes Nora and Bart their fellow siblings. But the way she said my impulsive boy, it's technically Nora is kind of what OG Speed Force was to Barry for the next generation, that being Bart and Nora in that regard. So I just think that's so interesting to think about, because my impulsive boy, just the way she said that, so motherly that's so interesting. And then him coming back, be like, hey, you miss me? Thanks, SFN. And immediately I had to pause. I was like, what is SFN? I was like, oh, Speed Force Nora. And then it was like, what is that? Speed Force Nanny. I was like, oh. If I had just let it play out instead of pausing it, they would have given me the answer immediately. But it's Speed Force Nanny, of course. Once again, it's just the connections between everyone, because obviously you have... This is technically their first time meeting, And once again, it's that kind of the Doctor and River Song meeting each other at a time. It's this is the first time Jay's ever meeting Bart, but for Bart, it's I've known you. It's Uncle Jay. He's like, Uncle Jay? Actually, I like the ring of that, It's it's nice. It's nice to meet you, Bart. And it's just kind of yeah, especially because he lost his Jay, but to see Jay in front of him now, So all right, we're all supercharged. All right, let's go out there. And then you get that beautiful moment of them all lined up. I'm like, this is the biggest grouping of speedsters we've gotten in ever. Because I referenced it before. At any given time, the most speedsters we've ever had, we've had it twice, but it's been 3 speedsters at once. And for it to be 6. I'm being stupid. Well, it's 5 speedsters and a force of nature. So that's really badass. It's let's give it everything they got. Everyone gets their moment to shine. Bart throwing what I figured as much, because he brought it up last episode, and it turns out, yeah, full blown. They say stars, but I'm like, those look like freaking speed shurikens. So there's that. Nora does her speed lasso, which I think is so interesting, because I didn't think about it until I'm looking at this episode. I'm like, it's very similar to Psyche's psychic thing that whips and kind of tentacle arms that he does. Not the same, but it just kind of reminded me of that. And then you have Jay doing the classic, well, he just threw the hat, but I think his whole thing is to also like funnel, like kind of do like what Iris did, but through the helmet. I think that's kind of like that, but regardless, still a style. I always think like hat stuff like that. I'm trying to remember. Oh, I guess what comes to my mind is Dante and Devil May Cry 5, like the whole thing with the hat. I guess it kind of reminds me of that. But like hats as weapons are always just such an interesting thing. But also like, okay, Big Nora snaps her fingers and knocks him. I'm like, what is that? You're just too overpowered. You can just snap your finger. Once again, you are a force of nature, so it's like you don't even have to get all flash. You just snap. And Barry throwing the lightning, Iris wind tunneling her arms. It's just like, dude, this is sick. But despite everything, the clones get up because they're feeding off of Nora. They were already doing that before, but even just being in close proximity to her now, it's like, right, it's not helping, so she has to leave. She doesn't want to leave them, but Barry's like, you're still going to be by our side, but you just need to get out of here before they continue draining from you, because draining from her is draining from them, because they all, stem from her. So they kind of have to retreat for a while, and obviously everything with Cisco and Frost, which I love that Cisco's like, can a man get a break? And so he ends up putting that bubble around him and Frost after telling her to hold her breath. And then afterwards, it's like, yeah, I did it. He's like, I love it. Him being like, I even answered my own question. Yes, a man can get a break. He's like, am I a genius? And she's like, never do that again. He's like, I'm gonna take that as a yes. Like, celebrate it. It's like, oh, I love you so much, Cisco. So now comes the situation of like, well, what are they going to do? Like, they threw everything they had at these clones and it wasn't enough. So what are we going to do? And so Barry, still reluctant to give organic speed to August. They do come to a conclusion because obviously, well, I forgot how it ended, but I was like, right, Allegra and Chuck, Chester ended up she ended up powering up the machine because Chester went to her, because she's, obviously sad about the whole Allegra thing, but Chester points it out to her like, right, but Allegra made her choice and you made yours. You decide, if you weren't there to save the Flash, he would have died, and he's here because you saved him. He's here to save the city, do what he's doing to stop a war. Your cousin went off to start one, so it's like she made her choice to go off alone and you decided to stick around. So like, I'm sure that doesn't fully alleviate the guilt, but it makes her, I think, feel a little bit better of like, right, like if I had gone off with Allegra, I would have just been there on a mission to kill people. With doing what I sticking around, I'm saving people's lives, not just ending them like my cousin. Like, she did make her, she couldn't let go of her revenge. She kind of like, she failed this city, but you haven't, And so when the time came, Allegra supercharged it and they were able to take down the clones, but it's still like, right, there's still more out there, so what are we going to do? And so the question is, are you going to give Hart the speed or not? And they ended up rebuilding the machine and everything, but it's, Barry decided, right, we're going to do this. So the question then becomes like, all right, if he gets his organic speed, he can get the clones to kind of leave. So they hope that this could change the tide of everything. But I guess like Barry and Iris thought this through, knowing like, right, like there's a good chance like you're going to revert to who you are, and who you were before isn't about losing. So, and even, Cecile being like, no, it's okay, you can do this. I think maybe you could make the argument because of what Cecile went through this season, kind of facing her past of changing, like that you're not set in stone by your past. His future technically doesn't determine who you are, that you get to decide who you are. You don't have to let the past like hold you back. But sadly, upon getting supercharged, like it reignited his memories, and he just immediately went back to who he was before, and ends up absorbing all of the clones. And obviously for Barry, it's like, right, Nora, you and Bart stay here. Me and your mom, we got a plan. She's off with Big Nora. It's like, right. So it's like, what plan are they concocting? As Barry goes toe to toe with this. Godspeed and everything. So it's like, all right, because he's like, right, why you think I chose this time? Because this is a time where your speed is peak you, and so it's like, this is a perfect opportunity to steal it from you and gain even more speed. But lo and behold, who shows up? Freaking Eobard. Didn't expect that. So it's like, right, you got your sworn enemy to help you take down Bart's sworn enemy, which I'm sure even for Bart, because even Nora being like, "Are you okay?" Like when August was getting that speed, it's like, right, this changes everything because they know what the future is, and like by doing this, it changes everything. So now their future that they eventually go back to isn't going to be what they left. So it's like, what is it going to be? Like, how are things going to play out? There's going to be, it's like any ripple effect. There's going to be good and there's going to be bad. So, that's the very, obviously last week, referencing a different show, there was some kind of like, unprecedented time and just, of like, not knowing what's going to happen next. That's the whole thing. But, them joining forces like that. And I love that, Godspeed just like drops down like a bolt of lightning and like uses it like a sword, and then like Barry and Eobard look at each other and they do. I'm like, oh, I guess you just figured like, well, if he can do it, we can do it too. Theirs is a little different. He literally supercharges by literally bringing down like lightning from the sky to do it. He's like, yeah, I'm full blown godding this right now, and it's like, well, I guess we're just going to take from our own speed to do it. And honestly, it full-blown turned into Star Wars, which honestly, I'm not complaining about. Speedster Star Wars, gimme. Like, that was actually pretty dope, even seeing at points when they're using their super speed, and like, it's actually pretty sick. I'm like, would have never expected the Flash to turn into this. I mean, it makes sense. You can literally throw lightning, so why wouldn't you be able to like concentrate and like hold on to it? Because you see that in plenty of I rep like animes and stuff like that. You're charging enemy energy instead of rather than using it, you like squeeze it and forge it into a weapon. So it's but still, them going toe to toe like that, and in the end, Eobard stabbing August. Luckily, he didn't kill him. But even Barry's like, what are you doing, Eobard? We're not here to kill him. He's like, oh, but wasn't that the whole point? That's why you got me? And he's like, now that he's out of the way, we get to finish this. Like, I've been waiting for a long time. Like, you brought me back, Flash, for me to be your undoing. And, and like Barry's like, I'm going to give you one chance to walk away, Eobard. And Eobard tries to punch him, but Barry grabs him and, like, tosses him. He's like, what did you do? Because I got faster, didn't you? I don't, now, initially I was like, did he take some of his speed in that moment or something? That's what I was wondering. But then I'm like, well, it might be in reference to, like, the last time we saw Eobard was season 6, right? Technically, I want to say it was, like, the end of season 5 was, like, the last time he popped up. I could be mistaken. Maybe, I know, like, he had possessed, there was a whole thing of, God, the other, Harry, the one that knew Allegra. I'm blanking on his name now. Remember that version last season confronted, like, Eobard in his head? That's, like, the last time we actually saw Eobard, but I think physically, the season 5 finale was, like, the last time. I could be super mistaken. But I'm wondering if that's what that's supposed to represent. Like, oh, I've actually gotten faster. You're at the same speed you were back then. So, yeah, I have the upper hand. Like, he's like, right, you might have gotten faster, but I'll get faster too, Barry. I'm not done with you. I'm coming back for you. Which is interesting because, obviously, this is like, Tom's, like, last time in this series. So that's what kind of shocked me. Like, because obviously it's him and Carlos are, they kind of officially already left, but this was, I guess, like, their final appearances. So, like, bringing Eobard back knowing that Tom's leaving, I guess that's just for the future. Because they don't know if he's ever going to come back. So, I guess just throwing it out there in the universe of, like, yeah, this is out there. Not unless next time we see Eobard, he's back to his old face, or, like, he has a new face. I don't know. I don't know whether that's what that's supposed to be, or is it just going to be like, nah, your arch nemesis is back and he's just somewhere else. It's interesting. In the process of defeating your son's arch nemesis, you ended up having to bring yours back. So it turns out like Nora could Big Nora could tap into the negative speed force, but she needed an anchor iris to, like, I guess, keep her from getting, like, completely overwritten or consumed by it. And it's like, right. I thought that was so interesting. Like, a speedster, like, they're like, what makes a speedster really dangerous is the limitations on their powers and they're, like, on how they use their powers. And Godspeed has no limitations, but Eobard has one, that he will never let anyone kill me. Like, yeah, because it's like, he will always do what's best to protect you. He will have your back until the moment he has an opportunity to kill you himself, because like, no, I need to kill you with my bare hands. I can't let anyone else do it. This is my lifelong mission. It's what I eat, sleep, breathe, and think about all the time, So it all worked out at the end. Yes, August is in Iron Heights now, so once again, changes the future to what? We don't know. But for Barry, it's like, right, but Eobard's back. He's like, yeah, but that's future us problem. Like, for now, it's like, we won. We stopped the war, and we're all together, and everything worked out in the end, you know? And I just thought that was, you know, beautiful and amazing, you know? And I'd skipped over it, but I did like that Bart was going to go chase after Barry, but Jay's the one that stopped him. It's like, both you and me know that Barry would never go out there. Like, you know, if he told you to stay here, it's because he has a plan. And he's like, it's time for us to take off our hats, kid. And, you know, it's like, right, that line means the most to Bart. So for technically, this is Jay technically saying this line the first time to him, but obviously, you know, he's heard it time and time again over the years that, you know, like Jay actually trained him and they spent time together. I thought that was pretty dope. But obviously Barry suggesting that, like, oh, him and Iris renew their vows, which totally makes sense when it, you know, have an actual full-blown wedding to a certain extent, because it's like, right, their first wedding got interrupted because crisis on Earth X, and then like they had to, like, the end of the crossover, they, you know, had a little, you know, wedding, obviously Diggle officiating it, you know, Oliver and Felicity being a part of it and everything as well, doing their own, you know, taking part in it as well, you know, so it was kind of a small thing, but now they kind of get to gather everyone. And I love the whole thing of, like, obviously Caitlin and Frost showing up, and Frost kind of being upset. She's like, because Caitlin's like, are you sure you want me to be your first one? Don't even mention him. He lied and betrayed me, which he's still out there. So, but the problem is, I think what bothers her the most is, like, right, I still like him, and that's the issue, because I do, despite that. You know, it's like, oh, that's going to be an interesting match, those two. Then you have, like, Joan being like, oh, like, you know, I'd like to renew our vows, and Jay's like, I'd marry you all over again, which I'm like, oh, that's sweet and interesting in so many regards, considering, like, the versions of you probably have gotten together, versions of those characters, you know, in some shape or form have probably gotten together on multiple occasions across the multiverse. I guess that's kind of what's supposed to be, when we can nod to that, but Cecile being like, oh, I love weddings, and Joe's like, oh, copy, got that super clear, so, I really like that. But it's kind of the wedding event, and it's just like, you know, and just everyone gathered and everything, and just Iris coming out looking amazing, and it's just like, dude, this is actually so cool. Like, once again, it's like, it's a bigger wedding now, because, I mean, granted, not everyone gets to be here, but, you know, I mean, at least Oliver and Felicity were there for the last one, sadly they can't be here for this one, but still, having all, like, the people important in your life, well, most of that can be there, are there, you know, celebrating that moment with them. And first and foremost, getting Bart to sing, I'm like, of course you're going to do that. I mean, when you cast a really good singer like him as Bart Allen, of course you're going to utilize that. And it's like, of course you're going to make him go, like, just freaking show off. And even love that Joe looks at Cecile at one point like, what? Almost like, my grandkid is, like, blowing this out of the park. Like, what the hell's going on? Like, he's got that look. And then when he's done, it just Barry be like, oh, that was Crash, son. He's like, no, Dad, no. He's like, no, but that's what you said. No. I say it fine. You when you say it, it's weird. It's like, oh, ew, old man, don't steal my lingo. That's disgusting, Dad. Don't do that. But also him and Iris's vows, like Iris's to him, and I love Cisco being like, that was beautiful. Top that. And then Barry does his, and it's like, all right, cool. And he's like, all right, yeah, that was pretty good. 10 points in Gryffindor. I also love him being like, yeah, this is the best sequel. This is the best sequel to anything since Empire Strike Back. And then I have Chester nodding his head like, very true. I'm like, and those are the people who are going to get that the most. It seems like Barry's just probably like, okay, Cisco, of course you're going to make a Star Wars reference. I mean, which perfect episode of Make One with the freaking, like, speedster lightsabers pretty much, so. I'd actually skipped over it too. The Kramer thing took me by surprise for a minute, because I thought, like, what's going to happen is, like, oh, like, Barry or somebody's going to save him in time while they're dealing with all of these Godspeeds, and then it was like, she starts dashing as a speedster. I was like, what? I thought she had immortality. Like, Adam, you're telling me she's a speedster? That's how she's... I'm like, what? But then we find out, no, she's like... It turns out she mimics meta abilities. That's her meta ability. So she's like Peter from Heroes and a Rogue from X-Men. Except she doesn't need to touch anyone to get their abilities. She can mimic them. It seems like it's temporary too, which is interesting because like I don't think either Rogue or Peter's abilities are temporary. Because I know eventually, and originally in the like earlier parts of Heroes, he could hold multiple abilities at once. Eventually, he could only do one at a time. Rogue can do the same thing. She can hold multiple abilities at once. I don't think she ever loses them. I think she always keeps them, if I'm not mistaken. So that's just interesting to think about. But it's like, right. But she doesn't need to be like, doesn't have to touch them. She just has to be nearby. So the irony, like she spent so much time hating metahumans, and she is one. And obviously for her, she apologizes for everything, you know. But Joe's like, right, I just knew you just needed to find your heart, you know, which you did. But it's like, I knew deep down you were a good cop. But for Kristen, it's like, right, I'm going to take a leave of absence to kind of like readjust my perspective on things, you know. So I'm assuming Joe's eventually going to just take this opportunity to get his job back. But I doubt we've seen the last of Kristen now that she's out there in the universe. I mean, I guess it makes sense. I'm sure that she probably isn't the only one. There's probably other DC equivalents to like the whole like mimicry / copycat abilities. I'm sure there are. I don't know. I'm not saying like she's the only one, because I'm sure there's plenty of people in like every like superhero universe that have similar abilities and stuff like that. But I doubt this is the last we've seen of Kristen. Maybe it's for a little while. Maybe she'll come. I don't know. Because what I thought was really interesting though is like, when it was all said and done, first and foremost, like Barry like doing flash time of Iris kissing. I'm like, the last time that happened was in season 4, if I remember. Which that's also an interesting thing too. Like Nora's here, like at the end of the season, like popping up. Like that's when she first popped when she was in season 4. Like her final appearance in season 4 was at the end. So it's just kind of almost like seeming everything coming full circle, except this time like, you know, it's like, yeah, everyone's gathered. There's some other faces, as well as like, oh, Bart's here. You know, so it's just interesting how that played out. I think maybe that's kind of what they were going for to a certain extent. But like I said, like the last time they were in together, like flash time kissing like that, I believe was in the courtroom when Barry was kind of found guilty. The whole DeVoe thing. So that was kind of. Once again, it's kind of super sweet and awesome, you know. So, but what I thought what really surprised me is that they didn't really do much setup for the future, you know. I guess it's just kind of like, oh well, you know, we've left some loose enough threads to a certain extent, but they wrapped everything up to a certain extent. So it's like, right, there's still the Nora and Bart of things, like them returning to the town. Like maybe when we begin like the next season, they'll be kicking it around for a little while before they have to go back to their time. But maybe that leads to some shenanigans altogether. But you know, we'll ultimately have to wait and see. But maybe it's out there about what potentially season 8 can include. Which yes, the show has been renewed for an 8th season. But what I was saying is, like, maybe there's information out there about potentially what they have planned for season 8. I haven't read anything. I kind of don't want to read anything. I do think they're having DC Fandom this year, maybe. So maybe some stuff will come up then. I think what I was just because I looked it up is like season 8 is going to be premiering in November. So I don't know if DC Fandom will happen before. I don't remember when it happened. Didn't it happen like September and December, if I remember correctly? It was quite a bit apart, like part 1 and part 2 of it. Day 1 and day 2 to a certain extent, but maybe some information will come up then. Once again, I'm saying that because I'm thinking they're doing DC Fandom because they're not doing Comic-Con this year. DC nor Marvel. So regardless, it leaves a lot of stuff open, and I guess that's why, because it's like, right, we don't want to like, you know, it's just like whatever the story. I guess like the beginning of season 8 is going to be where we kind of get an idea. I'm curious, are they going to structure it like this season? Like I think I've brought it up before. I didn't realize, I guess in retrospect, looking back, season 6 was kind of structured like that, but I felt like, I don't know, like season 7 not that it was a problem, it was just interesting, like it was kind of sectioned off in like novels, I think is kind of what it was categorized, but like these different arcs put together like that. So I don't know. I'm curious, like, is season 8 going to be like that, or is it just going to be more typically structured like the previous seasons? I don't know. I'm interested to see where the future holds for all that. I mean, you also never know, like, how other stuff might influence stuff on this, or how stuff in The Flash will influence other shows. It's going to definitely be interesting to see what the, future has in store in more ways than one. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.